and a former Danish prime minister leading the way, they designed a path forward to maximize job creation and ensure social and economic development for the region. The solution was to transform the large industrial site into a green industrial park. A public-private partnership, Lindø Offshore Renewable Center, was established to pave the way. Today, the old shipyard is a flagship of offshore wind facilities. More than 100 companies are operating at the industrial park, and in the process, creating thousands of jobs and keeping the local community alive. Clean energy transitions can create jobs, enhance our quality of life, and ensure a cleaner, healthier environment. But across the planet, some communities are facing similar challenges to the ones in Lindø brought by clean energy transition. When we phase out fossil fuels, some sectors will decline, some jobs will disappear, and some companies will need to adapt to survive. We cannot ignore this and just tell the affected people and regions that we've gained at the macro level. We need to find ways to enable citizens to benefit from the transition and to protect those who might be vulnerable to them. These new jobs will not necessarily occur in the same sectors, be located in the same regions, and require the same skills. That's why a green transition must emphasize reskilling and regional development to ensure that our communities aren't left behind. The fact is that we don't need to make a false choice between the planet and economic opportunity. We stand on the thresholds of so many new possibilities and jobs. This old shipyard is the perfect example. If we are to succeed in achieving our climate goals, we need to put people at the center of green transitions. Excellencies, colleagues, this is exactly what we've worked towards for the past year and why this commission has convened. I'm proud to see the outcome of the commission, 12 actionable recommendations to assist decision makers in accomplishing clean energy transitions that have people at the center. A people-centered approach that ensures the benefits and costs involved in the transformation of our energy system are distributed fairly in a way that protects the most vulnerable in society. I'm looking forward to hear from you all here today when we share best practices and all the good and tangible examples. Thank you and welcome to this third and final meeting of the Global Commission on People-Centered Clean Transitions. I will now pass the floor to our host. Over to you, Fatih.
Mr. Jorgensen and Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much to all of you for joining to this discussion, and to all of the colleagues who are following this around the world, this live stream event. I am delighted that so many members of the Global Commission have joined this meeting today, and I greatly appreciate all the commitment you have shown over the last 9 months. Very much appreciated. When I convened this commission, I invited a range of different perspectives, different colleagues from different backgrounds, so that we can all learn from each other, our perspectives, our preoccupations, and our thoughts. I am very pleased that we have been able to hear all those different opinions and voices. The issues the Commission has been discussing are, in my view, among the most critical ones in today's debate on energy and climate action. Dear colleagues, our numbers show an extremely clear trend, which is the following: a new global energy economy is emerging around the world. All the data shows that. There are volatilities temporary volatilities here and there, but the direction is very clear. And this would mean that there will be a transformation, as Minister Jorgensen mentioned, how we produce and consume energy. And the clean energy technologies, it can be hydrogen, it can be carbon capture, it can be electric vehicles. This will create millions of jobs, our numbers show, which is a good news. Good jobs, well-paid jobs, it is very good. But it is not a secret that the many jobs will be also lost. Many communities will be negatively affected from this transition. So therefore, how we support, protect those individuals, communities should be, in my view, an absolute priority for all the governments around the world. In my view, if a government has a hydrogen strategy, which many governments have now, they should also have a strategy how they are going to protect, support people whose jobs will be at risk. And these strategies will require well-designed and focused policies. And as such, the recommendations, the 12 recommendations of this commission will be very helpful. You will see it will be referred many years to come by many policy makers in the next years. And when I look at all these 12 recommendations, I see a lot of expertise. I see a lot of foresight and vision. And as such, I thank you very much for that. And for the International Energy Agency, this will be a key part of our daily work at the IEA. As much as we push the global clean energy transitions, we will keep an eye on developing, advising policies around the world, the governments, and these 12 recommendations will be a North Star for our work here, and I believe many governments around the world. I would like to express my deepest appreciation to the 30 members of the Commission. You have shown a real commitment. I am really indebted to all of you. But I would like to thank in particular Minister Dan Jorgensen. Very many thanks, Dan. When I see you on Thursday, I will thank you also in person in Copenhagen. And also Minister Gladima for our co-chair. Merci beaucoup, Madame la Minister. And but also,
thank you very
I would
much,
like to sincerely thank the Danish Prime Minister, Mette Frederiksen, for her great leadership of this commission. Now, dear colleagues, I would like to finish the motto we have at the IEA. Clean energy transitions are for and about the people. We will never forget this. And your work, your 12 recommendations as such, this document will be a North Star for the International Energy Agency for many years to come. Thank you very much once again to all of you. And I turn back to my colleague, Brian Motherway.
Thank you very much, Dr. Baral. I will now hand back to our chair for today's event, Minister Jorgensen.
Thank you so much, Fatih, for those words and your leadership in general. Now allow me to just start by making a few remarks on today's agenda. Today's meeting will be structured around the 4 themes spanning the 12 recommendations. And we've asked you to all speak on case examples that illustrate the recommendations' substance. Therefore, interventions will not follow typical protocol. Instead, we will follow a narrative flow based on the recommendations. At the beginning of each theme, the IEA will set out the key recommendations of the specific theme before we turn to the interventions. Due to the time constraint, I ask you to stay brief in your remarks and not exceed the time limit of 4 minutes. Also, I would like to remind you that the meeting is open to the public via live streaming. Having said all this, let's turn to the first theme. The first theme is that we're looking at today relates to the creation of jobs, the protection of workers, and the development of skills. Brian, I give you the floor to introduce the key recommendations here.
Thank you very much, Minister. As the Minister has said, the recommendations made by the Global Commission fall under 4 themes, which we'll discuss separately today. And the first theme is, in many ways, certainly the one we've discussed most and the one that is in most people's minds in terms of clean energy transitions, and that's decent jobs and worker protection. All of these recommendations are backed up by large amounts of case studies available on the IEA website, which explore the examples and experience that the Commission members highlighted as teaching us something about how to do these policies well in ways that benefit people the most. And the 3 recommendations here are to design transitions specifically to maximize the creation of decent jobs as widely spread and to bring the benefits to as many people as possible. Secondly, to develop tailored government support for those communities and workers that may be affected negatively, as well as keeping a focus on skills, training, redeployment of people, and creating new opportunities. And thirdly, using social dialogue, robust stakeholder engagement, and policy coordination to deliver better outcomes for all. Back to you, Minister.
Thank you so much, Brian. With that said, I'd like to invite the founder of the Global Optimism Group, Christiana Figueiredos, to be our first speaker. Christiana, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. And I hope that you will forgive me, Minister, for breaking the protocol that you have just established, because I actually wanted to use this opportunity to thank the IEA for several critical, important products that we have seen from the IEA this year. First, the report on 1.5, absolutely critical to focusing our efforts on energy, then the World Energy Outlook, the G7 decarbonization study, and now today, this people-centered energy transition. I am really in debt to the IEA for this because we know that we can measure the transition in terms of tons and megawatts. That's one way of measuring the transition. Frankly, that's the easiest way of measuring the transition. But the ultimate purpose, as Fatih has just mentioned, the ultimate purpose of timely emission reductions is to improve the quality of human life, especially to protect the most vulnerable to the well-known impacts of climate change, as well as to protect those that are most vulnerable to the unintended consequences of the energy transition. Now, those are much more complex than emission reductions. They're much harder to measure. But if we don't have this ultimate purpose squarely in front and center of us, we could very dangerously forget. That is why it is so important that, that this report has been pulled together, that we now have case studies that showcase how in some jurisdictions, many of these aspects are being taken account. Those are there as examples, not as models to be copied per se, but rather to serve as examples and as inspiration, and truly to be adapted to the local circumstances as seen to be best fit. So with that, I apologize for breaking the protocol, not fitting squarely into this first section, but I really did want to thank Fatih Birol for his leadership, especially this year, to the entire team at IEA that has been so busy with all of these reports this year, to our chair, our co-chair, and of course, to all the commission members.
Thank you so much.
Back to you, Minister.
Thank you so much, Christiana. And I do agree with you. It really is impressive what the IEA has delivered within the last year, also before that, but especially the last year. And it's extremely important not only leading up to the meeting in Glasgow, but in general with regards to the discussions and the decisions needing to be taken within the next months and years. So you're forgiven for breaking protocol. Normally, I'm pretty tough on those things, but you're forgiven. Now I turn the floor to the General Secretary of ATUC, Sharon Burrow. Sharon, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Minister. And indeed, I can only reiterate what Christiana says. You know, it's really a pleasure to be associated with the IEA, even in this small advisory role, because it is a holistic approach. And in the context of decent jobs and worker protection, I don't think you're out of line at all, Christiana, because it is the measurement. And I'm not talking about facts and figures. We need data, of course. We need to verify progress. But we need to actually understand whether or not we've got the support of working people, or we won't make the transition as fast and furious as we have to. We all know we're in a race against time. I say that to workers all the time. But we all know that as much as every sector has to transition, people are feeling extraordinarily vulnerable. You've had a combination of crises. You had, first of all, the convergence of historical levels of inequality and insecure work before the pandemic. We have a broken labour market, whatever way you want to look at it. That's the truth. 60% informality. No rights, no minimum wage, no rule of law. And of the 40% of workers working in some formal contract of employment, a third of those are precarious or insecure. And then we had the climate emergency. And on top of that, the health and the economic shock of indeed the pandemic. The good news is I read this ILO stats today, and indeed it's not a direct correlation, but for every 14 vaccinated workers, we've added a job in the last couple of quarters. So that's good news on the social front. But on the environmental front, I was just talking to Laurence Tubiana, and we're still seeing too many excuses. We're seeing people put forward plans, governments put forward plans. But when you have a look at them, they're like a house of cards. There are some that are very courageous, and there are others that are, you know, simply trying to get through the moment of this COP, trying to actually look at what is the least amount they have to do. We know that's not enough. So I just want to say, when you read the recommendations in terms of this commission, then you have a number of things. You have a commitment to just transition. That means jobs, jobs, and jobs, climate-friendly jobs, because all jobs have to be sustainable. There's a commitment to actually look at what it means to provide security, and that comes through social dialogue. I've said many times, for some workers that will mean secure pensions because they're at the point of pension age. For others, it might mean a bridge to secure pensions because they're within a few years of early retirement. But for the bulk of workers, as we transition through the economy, we should be looking at not only how we protect and grow jobs, and where there are seriously no alternatives to displacement, what's the income support, the skills support, and the redeployment support for those communities? And what's the renewal for those workers? And what's the renewal for their communities? What are the new industries if renewable energy isn't adequate? So those plans can only come from the local knowledge backed by governments and employers with workers and their unions. When you have that kind of trust in terms of workplaces, or when you go to the communities, if you add community representatives, then people have hope. And this document recognizes that, puts it in the context, of course, of the foundation of this transition, which is energy. It's not the end of the story, but it's certainly the bulk of the actual tram tracks that we need to get us from A to B. So I just wanted to say thank you. And I want to remind us of the good news for workers. you know, we have some adjustment in terms of the nature of the jobs, where the jobs are. We've got to make them quality jobs. But with the World Resources Institute, I was pleased to release a study last week that is an actual what's happening today. What are we extrapolating from what's happening with investment today? And you can see that dollar for dollar, every unit of currency that's invested in renewable energy or clean technology, you get virtually 2 jobs to 1. Now, of course, you have to look at whether they're in the same area or in the same industry, but we can make this work if we're serious about creating jobs. And I was delighted to see the G7 nations, for the trade ministers, talk about, you know, a world of trade that actually supports improving living standards and full employment with, of course, a rights base. And this, I think, this report takes us right into that mix. And I'm delighted to see some of the others on this panel who have been staunch defenders of just transition all the way through. So thank you very much for your efforts. And I think we can go to COP absolutely confident we can promote, amongst other areas of work, this area of work as a leading, you know, beacon of both wise ambition and indeed a humanity-based aspiration in the mix.
Thank you so much, Sharon. And yes, we will definitely also bring these recommendations to Glasgow and make sure that they are not only heard, but also put to the table of the negotiations. So thank you so much for that. And now we need to move across the Atlantic, at least from where I'm sitting. For some of you, it's different oceans, but we need to go to the US. Senator Manchin, are you with us, Senator?
I am with you. Can you hear me?
That's great. I can. The floor is yours.
Well, thank you, Minister Jorgensen. I appreciate being with you and all of our colleagues here. It's a delight, and we're a little bit busy in Washington right now, but we're just trying to keep things moving. I'm honored to have been a part of this commission tackling the important issue of how we ensure no one is left behind. And I repeat, no one is left behind who has done the heavy lifting and all the hard work for our country and basically the world, if you will, as we transition to a cleaner energy future. It's been insightful to hear how countries are undertaking this transition and navigating how to make it work for their communities. I'm proud of the recommendations that they have come out of this body, and am confident that the lessons learned from our nation's experiences will be put to good use. As a United States Senator representing one of the largest coal-producing states in the United States, and as chairman of the United States Senate Energy and Natural Resources Committee, preserving and creating new opportunities for our coal miners and coal communities is always front and center with me and one of my top priorities. Creating new opportunities means we need to use all of the tools that we have, and government investment, if done right, can be one of the most powerful tools that we could ever have. I believe it's our responsibility to meet fossil communities where they are and to use government incentives to drive new opportunity to them and not the other way around. We need to direct the power of incentives to places that have been the hardest hit by the energy transition and diversity, the economies of those areas. And I've always said, I do not believe that we can eliminate our way to a cleaner global climate. I do believe that we can innovate our way to a cleaner global climate if we're all working together. One of the ways I try to do that is through a bipartisan advanced energy manufacturing tax credit proposal. It would drive much needed investment in the United States, energy manufacturing, by investing $8 billion US dollars to retool, expand, and build new facilities that make or recycle energy related products in the United States. Importantly, it would set aside $4 billion, half of that money, $4 billion, specifically for the use in communities that have been coal mines closed or coal power plants shuttered over the past decade. Rebuilding the U.S. manufacturing sector provides a key opportunity to help displaced workers and their families while positioning and repositioning the United States in existing and new energy markets. People in states like mine of West Virginia that have been hit the hardest by the energy transition, they want meaningful work and are looking for a hand up, not a hand down, I've had so many proposals. We'll just pay them for a year. We'll do this. Just send money. Don't send money, send opportunities. That's exactly what this kind of proposal would give them. The International Finance Corporation estimates that the clean energy transition has opened up nearly $23 trillion in opportunities for climate smart investments in emerging markets between now and 2030. So let's make sure that we find ways to target some of that investment in areas where there is a ready and eager workforce standing by. So I want to thank you again for the opportunity to speak today and to learn from others about how to make sure everyone, and I mean everyone, has a place in a cleaner energy future. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Senator. And we know that you are extremely busy with negotiations in the Senate right now. So good luck with them. And thank you for being with us today.
Well, thank you, Minister, and to all the Ron and all the participants and everyone on the committees. I appreciate all the hard work that's been done. Together, we can make it a better world for all of us.
I believe we can. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And now I give the floor to the French ambassador, Pinico.
Okay.
Merci beaucoup. Je voudrais d'abord saluer notre travail collectif.
Thank you very much. I'd first like to greet our collective work under the leadership of Fatih Birol and the IA and Denmark. I think that today we've produced very good recommendations for COP26. The impact of energy transition on people's lives is going to be quite substantial. It's going to impact ways of life, and it, of course, can lead to concern and resistance. It's also going to change the profile of jobs and skills. What we've already seen is that the most vulnerable people who were probably going to be the first victims, but this transition means that we'll have to support them. We'll have to support the workers, we'll have to support the communities, and we'll have to establish tools of social protection and reskilling for the most vulnerable. So I think that the social issue, and this is very much at the heart of our work, is absolutely key, and it's a prerequisite for this energy transition to be a success. We're not just talking about providing support, we're talking about a very cornerstone for this to be successful. First of all, I think that we need to promote decent work and create quality jobs linked to the green transition. This means that we're going to have to adapt the skills to these new emerging jobs. And I'd like to recall some of the figures of the OECD and the International Labour Organization. The transition is going to lead to 50% of jobs to disappear or to be radically changed in the next 10 years. And so this is going to become a major issue in the national and international social dialogue, as has already been recalled today. The green transition, of course, has many important aspects. For example, it will lead to new jobs. Energy, of course, as a sector, will see many new jobs, but energy transition is going to have an impact on agriculture, building, industry. All of the sectors will be impacted. In France, for example, today, new green jobs are growing 6 times faster than other jobs, and 16% of job offers concern green jobs. In France alone, 4 million jobs will be green jobs, which means that they will be taking up some of these environmental challenges. So in the Industry 2030 plan, which is our recovery plan, we will train 400,000 people every year to take up these new jobs linked to the transition. And Minister Jorgensen said this. We need to make sure that the creation, destruction, and transformation of jobs can really benefit everybody, because we know that different communities, different regions won't be affected in the same way. And so what this means is that we need to find, of course, all the public investment and private investment to ensure the clean energy transition, but the private and public sector are also going to have to invest massively in order to reskill workers and support workers. Otherwise, we'll be leaving a lot of people by the wayside. The second issue is that we have to make sure that we have equitable access to heating and transport. We know that we will have to overcome the challenge of the cost of transition. This is something that we've seen in Chile and France with people demonstrating in the street. And this is because of the increase of fossil fuel, because of green taxes. So here we really need to strike the right balance using subsidies, using credits. And France today has been helping people retrofit their houses, or also a grant for people to buy new cars and replace their old cars. But if we want to make sure that people can have access to energy at a proper price, that's going to be a big challenge. We also need to support the more vulnerable people. Mr. Birol said this, 60% of people in the world work in the informal sector. And there are many people who work in the energy sector with informal contracts. We also know that 1 billion people live in poverty, and 70% of these people are women. And we're going to be talking about gender and a just transition. The United Nations shows that women and children are 14 times more likely to die in a climate event. Why am I linking these different figures? Well, because the most vulnerable people, from a social standpoint, are also those who are living in areas that are hard hit by climate change. And this is why we have to link. It's the same struggle, because it's the same people who are affected by the energy transition and who are hit by climate change. But it's also these people who can mostly benefit from a clean energy transition. So I think it's very important to stress this when we discuss a just transition. And this is why in the G7, France called for a tripartite statement of the G7 countries in favor of universal access to social protection. And we did this with the OECD and with the International Labour Organization. So by way of conclusion, we have to reskill our workers. We have to ensure equal access to energy. We have to ensure that we have universal social protection. This is essential to carry out a clean energy transition with the communities, with the workers. And finally, I'd like the Commission to be able to continue its work beyond COP26, because I think that we really need to share best practices, in particular, where social policies and energy policies meet. And we need for this a cooperation of the IEA, OECD, and ILO. We're really at the beginning of this journey, and we all realize what's at stake from a social point of view. And we know it's the same challenges as the clean energy transition. So let's work together for this. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ambassador. And now I give the floor to the chairperson of the Council on Energy, Environment and Water, Mr. Jamsrud Godray. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and greetings to all the fellow commissioners. And on behalf of the Council on Energy and Water, a good evening. It's been a very enriching experience to be part of the IEA's Global Commission on People-Centered Clean Energy Transitions. These collaborative conversations are necessary and timely as we increasingly understand and accept the need to balance the urgency of energy transitions and climate action with the development goals of nations, especially those from the global south. The world is in consensus on the need for clean energy transitions. The challenge now is to ensure that these transitions are equitable, fair, and inclusive, with due thought given to their impacts on people, communities, industries, and governance frameworks. India is setting a remarkable example by achieving people-centered, sustainable energy transitions while working on many developmental areas to alleviate poverty and improve the standard of living of our 1.3 billion citizens. Today, 40% of India's power is generated from non-fossil fuel sources. This is in accordance with our commitment under the Paris Agreement. India is also on track to achieve its commitments to reduce the emissions intensity of its GDP by 33 to 35% of its 2005 level by 2030, having already noted a 24% reduction. However, India will need to ensure that these achievements are sustained and even bettered to stay on a low carbon pathway, even as it attempts to become a $5 trillion economy by 2025. The IMF this month has projected that India will continue its recovery from the extreme setbacks of COVID-19 pandemic and is likely to become the world's fastest growing developing economy in 2022. This has major connotations for its clean energy transition and the decarbonization of its economic sectors, including agriculture, services, and industry. The industrial sector consumes nearly half of India's total energy and emits a quarter of its emissions. The big conundrum is that while hard to abate sectors such as iron and steel, cement, ammonia, and petrochemicals together emit 75% of industrial emissions, they also contribute to about a third of industrial value addition and a quarter of the total national employment. India also has the world's largest base of medium, small MSMEs, small industries, which form 90% of its industrial units. And in 2019, contributed to 45% of its total industrial value addition and almost half its exports. Almost 90% of India's estimated 450 million strong workforce is informal, with 5 to 10 million new workers added annually. The small industries and medium-sized industries employ about 40% of these workers. Overall, the manufacturing sector contributes to about 17% of the national GDP. It has seen a sharp decline of about 46% in employment in the last 5 years due to the global economic slowdown and has been hit hard by the pandemic and resultant changes in social and industrial activities. The Indian government is ramping up efforts to make India a global industrial hub through initiatives such as Make in India and the post-pandemic economic driver known as Atmanirbhar Bharat Abhiyan, which means a self-reliant India movement, and the startup culture in India. It is also offering production-linked incentives worth over $30 billion in 13 key sectors. The biggest manufacturing-linked initiative, Make in India, was launched by Prime Minister Modi in 2014 to facilitate investment, foster innovation, enhance skills, protect intellectual property, and build best-in-class infrastructure. India expects to create 100 million jobs via Make in India in the next few years. We must also keep in mind that energy sources that power these enterprises. The Council on Energy, Environment and Water estimates that despite efforts to exponentially scale up existing clean energy sources and commercialize new ones, such as green hydrogen, coal will continue to comprise at least half the energy mix in 2030. Coal production also supports millions of livelihoods. The state-owned Coal India has 270,000 employees and hundreds of thousands on contract. Phasing out coal will also strand employees of auxiliary services like washeries and freight, and those with derived economic dependence on the coal industry. Studies estimate that 10 to 15 million dependents are there on India's coal industry. It is therefore imperative for India to carefully chart the course of energy transition and decarbonization of these sectors as their outputs, energy consumption, and emissions increase exponentially. We must also take along and not leave behind these hundreds of millions of workers, their families and communities, whether in the energy or industrial sector. The hard-to-abate sectors in India face challenges, such as no unified national policy or strategy on decarbonization, lack of know-how and finance to drive process improvements, lack of investment in R&D by both government and industries, and long-term sunk investments in high-emission or low-efficiency equipment. Further prioritizing cost competitiveness by industries leads to deprioritizing areas such as exploring these new and cleaner technologies. India must develop equitable and inclusive employment opportunities in the industrial sector. And these will, of course, lead to good jobs, more skilling, and a new way to do things. Large corporations must take ownership of these transitions in their value chains, as they have the funds to improve processes and goodwill to change mindsets. In parallel, India needs to develop new jobs, which are for the coal and fossil fuel industry workers within limitations of their economic and social conditions, education, and skill level. These statistics are merely graphs on paper. These involve decisions and actions that will impact lives and livelihoods of billions of people in the global south. We must be considerate about the stage of development, the per capita income, the historic responsibility and equity of each country. The IEA Global Commission has taken a major initiative to bring attention to the need for people-centered clean energy transition by convening political leaders from several countries, the United Nations, the European Commission, as well as several influential social and sectoral experts from industry and civil society. I thank the Commission for their efforts and for the ongoing organization of this meeting, and I look forward to the Commission's report. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir, for your insights. And this concludes the first session, and we will swiftly move on to the second session on social and economic development. I'll give the floor back to you, Brian.
Thank you, Minister, and thank you again to all of our speakers for your intervention so far. And as our chair has said, the second theme is social and economic development and the imperative to align these goals with those of clean energy transitions. And the three recommendations the Commission is making is, first of all, to ensure that policies enhance social and economic development and improve quality of life for all. Secondly, a specific focus to prioritize universal clean energy access and the elimination of energy poverty universally. And thirdly, to maintain and enhance energy security, affordability, and resilience. Back to you, Chair.
Thank you so much. And now I would like to ask Prime Minister Phillips to start us off on this theme.
Thank you, Your Excellency, Dan Jorgensen, Executive Director, Dr. Birol, Your Excellencies and Ministers, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen. I'm honored to be part of today's proceedings of the Global Commission on People-Centered Clean Energy Transitions, as we hear about the key recommendations, national programs and initiatives that support these transitions. I take this opportunity to thank the International Energy Agency and fellow Commission members for their input in the creation of important recommendations that incorporate a diversity of experiences and best practices. I also thank the International Energy Agency for coordinating this meeting. In recognition of the role energy plays in eradicating poverty and improving the standard of living, Guyana has embarked on an energy transition plan that is centered on providing affordable, stable, and reliable energy while pursuing a clean energy mix. Presently, the extension of the national grid to the hinterland region of Guyana is not economically and technically feasible due to the remoteness. The challenges with readily accessing communities in this region contributes to higher energy prices owing to transportation costs and reliability issues. This hampers the ability to facilitate socioeconomic development in these communities over time. For this reason, distributed generation using clean energy is a more flexible technology suited to serving the dispersed communities of the hinterland of Guyana in the short term and enabling the transition to clean energy in the long term. Among the projects that are to be implemented as part of our energy transition is the highly anticipated gas to energy project. The project will provide 300 megawatts of power to the national grid and is expected to result in substantial cost savings for power generation while reducing electricity costs to consumers by at least 50%. In parallel, implementation of the 165 megawatt Amelia Falls hydropower project will be advanced to further enhance our nation's energy security. The government is implementing utility scale PV farms, solar systems for off-grid areas, expansion of the hinterland electrification program, replacement and upgrade of solar systems in hinterland areas, and the development of microgrids for large hinterland communities. These solar PV installations will result in approximately 46.4 megawatts of installed solar PV capacity and are expected to be commissioned within the next 2 years. Specifically, the projects entail the installation of 13 solar PV farms, the provision of 30,000 solar home systems for hinterland communities, the installation of 20 mini-grid solar PV systems for public and community buildings, the installation of more than 180 solar PV standalone systems for the government ICT hubs, and the installation of a 3 megawatt grid-connected solar PV system at the Cheddi Jagan International Airport. Ongoing hydropower projects include the installation of a 150 kilowatt hydropower station at the Cato Falls that will be completed in 2022, the rehabilitation of the Mokomoko hydropower project with an installed capacity of 0.7 megawatt, and the construction of a 1.5 megawatt hydropower station at Kumu. It is recognized that energy diversification in the transport sector is paramount in the transition to clean energy. The use of flex fuel, hybrid, and electric vehicles should be promoted along with the installation of charging stations where applicable. To ensure that opportunities for job creation within the communities, capacity building, and training exercises have been and will be incorporated as part of installation and maintenance. For instance, residents within the beneficiary communities under the Solar Home System project will be trained and employed for the installation of these systems as well as the monitoring and troubleshooting. Also, there is a women's economic empowerment program that will provide training to females to support livelihoods and encourage resilience using solar technology as part of a component for renewable energy solutions for the hinterland. In addition to serving domestic needs, it is important to link energy access projects to productive activities such as ICT, commerce, and agro-processing that will allow for greater community ownership and long-term sustainability. I believe that the work of the Commission and the recommendations produced is valuable in capturing and revealing possible actions and solutions for a successful clean energy transition that can be employed while adapting the local context. Looking ahead, I would like to see continued dialogue and partnerships in promoting people-centered clean energy transitions and support from the International Energy Agency in assisting countries like Guyana in this process. The government of Guyana remains committed to advancing a transition to clean energy that is people-centered and inclusive, and is interested in developing local capacity to drive this transition. I thank you for allowing me to have my intervention at this conference.
Thank you so much, Prime Minister. Next, we have Minister Puyo from Colombia to take the floor. The floor is yours, please.
Thank you very much, and warm greetings to everyone that's joining this very important commission. I would like to thank, obviously, the IEA and Honorable Minister Jorgensen for hosting and chairing this discussion. I would like to focus, obviously, on the theme that we're discussing. In Colombia, as you know, we've been advancing very strongly on energy transition, and a significant part of our policy has been focusing on incorporating significant variable energy resources to our power matrix. But equally important has been the efforts that we're doing to close the energy gaps, especially for the most vulnerable population in our country. And despite the fact that we are advancing on new technologies, on launching a hydrogen roadmap, bringing large-scale storage to the system, and other developments, we still, as a middle-income country, have about 400,000 families that lack access to electricity, especially in the most remote rural communities. So we have a program in place to bring electricity to about 100,000 families during this government, but that's not enough. And we firmly believe that all the burden cannot lay only in the hands of the government. So we're developing other mechanisms to allow the private sector to also join in the efforts that the government has been developing. And here I would like to share with you a mechanism that we developed for the network or the grid operators to be able to bring electricity to families, even though these solutions are not connected to the grid. We've called this mechanism virtual grids, and what it basically allows is that it entails the network operators to include these solutions, which could be individual photovoltaic systems or microgrids, as part of their tariff, and obviously also have access to the subsidies for electricity that the government has. Virtual grids have been very well received by the operators in Colombia. Our estimates is that with the use of this mechanism, we can bring electricity by the private sector to about 338,000 families in remote rural communities in Colombia. And we think that this, combined with the government efforts with public funds to bring the electricity directly, we could be able to close the gap and get to 100% coverage before 2030, which is the goal that we all share, but we think that that should be accelerated and bring forward, hopefully by 2025 or 2026. I would also like to mention that we've made significant efforts as well in our regulation to recognize and pay subsidies to hybrid and solar-only systems, which were not included in the regulation in Colombia and was an impediment before. And to conclude on how we're closing the gaps, we're also allowing the entering of prepaid energy services in rural communities. So in the same way as families can prepaid, for example, satellite television, they can prepaid energy, especially in those places that is very difficult for the government to access. So this, complements our policy in energy transition, which is going very well, but we're very well aware that we need to make sure that all the energy transition is truly people-centered. And we hope to also share this at Glasgow next year, because most of these virtual grids are being developed with variable renewable energy, basically solar and small hydro dams. Thank you very much for the opportunity to participate. And as usual, we'll continue to collaborate with all of you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Minister. Now we are in the unfortunate situation that both of our two next speakers are unable for technical reasons to join us right now, but they are ready. It's simply a technical issue. The fortunate part about it, though, is that this is just leading up to our planned break anyway. So I will suggest, or rather, since I am the chairman, I will dictate that we now take a forced coffee break. I'm not forcing you to drink coffee, but you're forced to have a break. And we'll see you all back here at 5 minutes past 6. technical problems. So we have Mr. Zhang, founder and CEO of Envision Group, with us. The floor is yours, sir.
Thank you. So today, I would like to share a real case study for being the first net zero industrial park in Inner Mongolia. So the city is called Erdos. Erdos is the coal mining city, which produce 16% of coal consumption of China. And there are three kinds of jobs. One is coal mining and coal-fired thermal power generation jobs and a coal chemical jobs. So with recent years, the tightening up for the coal production, the city is at the edge of the lose the future hope. However, there's abundant renewable sources in Erdos. So we calculate wind and solar, they have accumulative resource around 100 gigawatt installation potential. However, there are only 2 high voltage lines to transport energy outside Erdos. At the same time, we see companies in Shanghai area, Beijing area, have little access with green energy. So in Vision, we find a solution for the city of coal, is the net zero industrial park. So the net zero industrial park is using the Internet of Things technology to integrating wind farm, solar farm, hydrogen production, and storage. Of course, we're also including the seasonal liquefied air storage to buffer the energy consumption and productions. So you can see 100% renewable energy is going to supply to the industrial park. This is one energy transition. On the another hand, we see the industrial transition. So we make energy transition and the industrial revolution happen on the same time. So what we do, we making a 10 gigawatt battery factory for making battery for storage and for EVs. And we are also bring our customer, the largest commercial vehicle producer, FAW, into this park. And we bring our upstream supply chain for battery, cathode, anode, separator, also the carbon fibers. So these industries, they all consume lots of energy. Now, they are able to get secured green energy, also at a very competitive cost. Compared with other regions using the fossil fuel, this region, you are able to use only 4 US cents per kilowatt hour green energy. So, it's tremendous opportunity for Erdos. So people who are going to do the coal mining, they now do a much high value added green jobs, high growth green jobs. They're making electric vehicle on the production line, making batteries, and making wind turbines. So I think I also see once the first phase being completed end of next year, we are going to bring around 20,000 to 30,000 new jobs to this industrial park. And we do see this is really going to be the cradle for green industrial revolution, because it's the first time we are able to combining the energy production and energy consumption within the same park and to reach the green and economics at the same time, bring the new jobs, high growth green jobs to this place. So that's some interesting case. I also mentioned to this case to the Prime Minister of UK, Boris Johnson. We are doing similar thing. In the UK, we are investing a gigafactory, now the largest battery factory in the UK. With our partner, Nissan is the largest EV manufacturer in United Kingdom. We combine together. Now we are introduced the green supply chain for battery materials. And we are planning using the offshore wind energy to power the entire region to create a net zero industrial zone. So this could be a similar case to what we have been creating in Erdos. So that's a new model. I think it could be very interesting to discuss. Thanks.
Thank you so much, sir, for those insights. Now, unfortunately, Mr. Mantashe is not able to join us. Apparently, he's at a remote area with not the best of coverage. So maybe he will join us later. But we will move on in the program, and that brings us to session number 3, with focus on equality, social inclusion, and fairness. And I give the floor back to you, Brian.
Thank you very much, Minister, and thanks again to all of our speakers. And as the Minister has said, our third theme is equity, social inclusion, and fairness. And this was, of course, a very high priority in the Commission's discussions. And the 3 recommendations being made are, first of all, to incorporate gender equality and social inclusion considerations in all policies related to clean energy. Secondly, to ensure a fair distribution of clean energy benefits and avoid the risk of disproportionate negative impacts on vulnerable populations in particular. And thirdly, and very importantly, to integrate the voices of younger generations in decision making. So they're the recommendations, and we will now hear some cases. Back to you, Minister.
Thank you very much. And first we go to Switzerland, Minister Sommaruga. The floor is yours.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président. Excellence.
Thank you very much, Chair, Excellencies, dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I would like to commend the Commission for the outcome of our work. The recommendations we set forth are tangible and operational, and our members' examples are insightful and useful. I would like to describe in just a few words the example provided by Switzerland, as well as our plans to further our energy transition. We established a carbon tax on heating fuels and industrial processes in 2008. How did we go about convincing people to accept this carbon tax? Well, we set forth 3 main arguments. First of all, the carbon tax revenue is used in a transparent manner, meaning that concretely 2/3 of this revenue is given back to inhabitants and to businesses. And the last third goes to an energy building renovation program. Since in Switzerland, healthcare is mandatory, the reimbursement is a direct deduction from the insurance contribution, and this includes everyone, including children. Second, the businesses that aren't part of the emissions trading scheme have a choice between the stick, meaning the carbon tax, and a carrot. And the carrot is a carbon tax exemption if they cut back significantly and in a verifiable manner on their emissions. Third, we give people and the economy enough time to adjust and a clear vision of what the genuine costs of energy and carbon are. That is why we have a scheme which automatically increases our tax rate if the emissions aren't on the right track. Next year, this rate will increase again from $100 today to $130 by ton of CO2. In June last year, the Swiss people rejected by a slim majority, 51.6%, a revision of our CO2 law, which was necessary for us to achieve our Paris Agreement objective. This was a no, that was a no to another increase in energy prices. It wasn't a no to protecting the climate. Our objective is to have our emissions by 2030 with three main strategies. First of all, we would like to better target the carbon tax revenue by providing more support to the replacement of fossil heating systems by greener heating systems. Second, we would like to do away with fake incentives, such as a preferential tax treatment for diesel buses, and the benefits from this could go to electric buses. Third, the sanctions that vehicle importers pay if they go beyond our emissions regulations target should go to funding infrastructure to recharge electric cars instead of going to a road fund. I am sure that the work that we did in this commission will be a significant contribution to achieving the Paris Agreement goals. I hope that our commission will continue to be a space for constructive debates after COP26, and I am very pleased to see all of you, if we do all make it at COP26 when we present the outcome of our commission's work. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Minister. And now I would like to invite Panama's Secretary of Energy, Mr. Staff, to take the floor.
Thank you, Minister Jorgensen, and greetings to everyone in this great opportunity to share some of the key recommendations from this commission. For us, the basis for the success of any public policy in the short, medium, and long term is that focuses on understanding and contextualizing the evolving needs and expectations of people over time. To achieve ambitious energy transition that makes viable and materializes the goals of sustainable development and the Paris Agreement, it is critical to have the involvement, empowerment, and accurate knowledge of young people who are and will be part of a low carbon present and future. The focus shall be directed to social equity and inclusiveness, where underrepresented groups, including women, children, and future generations, people with disabilities, indigenous peoples, are part of the operational talent for a balanced climate. To revert those numbers that we actually have in the global level, the technological disruption attached to the energy transition depends on how we strengthen the skills of today's innovators, where technology developers must be innovators, as well as each policymakers, financial mechanism, developers, and including supply chain enterprises, together with the diverse variety of stakeholders in and outside the energy sector, where a vast number of them have to be women and youth. Relating to this and to the recommendation number 9, we state that young people need more than policies to achieve a balanced climate. Young people need a balanced life with options, tools, and skills to properly strive through the ongoing economic, social, and environmental changing conditions. Youth needs additional training to navigate energy transition, leading from right now to a full decarbonization in 2050. Therefore, last March in Panama, we launched a leadership program on sustainable energy, the SDG 7 Academy for energy professionals with age between 20 and 30 years old, with the support of 19 energy transition national and international, we called godmothers and godfathers, the facilitators, who acted as their professors, but also their coach and mentors to assure generational association of this endeavor. This 3-month program have the objective to build a network of leaders in sustainable energy and energy transition, in addition to providing the participant with a complex, broad, and innovative knowledge of public policies on energy and sustainability without losing perspective of empowering society to implement the national energy transition agenda that we have in our country. This SDG 7 Academy offers holistic tools for advocacy, building agendas, alliances with key actors, and territory-based participatory process that allows the youth to have a greater and better opportunity for representation, participation, and charisma to promote the energy transition. The program was implemented with creative methodologies and theoretical and conceptual context according to the specificity and singularity of the participant youth. The collectively built knowledge that allows legitimacy and strengthening their public policy actions. It has three transversal axes. We have the energy transition axis, the policy regulation and sustainability axis, and the gender, social, and ecological transformation axis. Panama is committed to adapt to a green economy through social protection and new skill, while ensuring that all have the chance to be part of energy transition that seizes the opportunity to significantly improve the well-being of people and planet. Allow me to congratulate all professionals who have contributed to build up a strategic recommendation to base energy transition in people. Also, I want to recognize the leadership of the International Energy Agency for supporting the globe to speed up a future led by actions who will transform our climate. We're building the future together, and we are building it now. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. And now it gives me a special pleasure to introduce a young person representing the youth constituency and the perspectives of the younger generation. Please, Mr. Benjamin Strzelecki from the SDG 7 Youth Constituency. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Minister Jorgensen. Excellencies, good evening from Abu Dhabi. It's an honor to join you today for the third meeting of the Commission. On behalf of the SDG 7 Youth Constituency, I'd like to express words of appreciation to the IEA, as well as the patron, the chair, and the co-chair of the Commission for their work and leadership over the last few months. We hope that the outcomes of these proceedings will become a guiding charter for planning just and inclusive energy transitions. Given the theme of this segment, which is equality, social inclusion, and fairness, I would like to share with you further work that our constituency has pursued in the context of the high-level dialogue on energy that many of you joined earlier this year. We believe that the level of inclusion of youth in this process may serve as a benchmark for engaging youth in future decision-making processes, which is one of the recommendations of this commission. Firstly, our constituency, in partnership with the High-Level Dialogue Secretariat, has identified and nominated youth experts to join the technical working groups and contribute to development of the theme reports that are the key outputs of the dialogue. Involvement of young people from the early stage is imperative to make sure that voices of all are heard when planning for the future of the energy systems. Secondly, youth advocates were given a prominent role in delivering the positions of the young generation during the ministerial thematic forums in July and during the summit week in September. As part of the Energy Compacts framework, our constituency, working with UNIDO and in partnership with Student Energy and BRICS Youth Energy Agency, has launched the call to action to champion youth mainstreaming. With this set of recommendations, we call on governments, the private sectors, and other organizations to include youth dimensions in their commitments for transformation of the energy sector. These recommendations are strongly aligned with the spirit of this commission, and I would like to share them with you as they reflect collective views of dozens of youth organizations from around the world. Firstly, we call to promote and support youth empowerment and leadership, including meaningful youth participation in policy and decision-making. That entails incorporating needs, priorities, and expertise of youth in design of relevant policies and programs. It is also about reformulating youth-responsive energy policies and building partnerships with youth, youth-led initiatives, and associations through formal and non-formal engagement mechanisms or platforms for youth inputs. Secondly, we call to provide equitable access to productive resources for youth-led enterprises, as we all understand the importance of entrepreneurship and innovation for supporting the energy transition. That entails establishing funding mechanisms and platforms that offer support to young people in the form of accelerators and incubators. Secondly, to provide special consideration for engagement with youth from underrepresented and marginalized communities and youth from the Global South. Then thirdly, the third priority is to elevate youth participation in the sustainable energy workforce, something that has been also very close to the work of the Commission. This entails providing access to accessible and for both formal and non-formal training and other learning opportunities and entry-level positions. It's about implementing youth-oriented workplace guidelines and establishing partnerships between educational institutions and the private sector to ensure that academic skills are aligned with labor market needs. The fourth recommendation is to generate knowledge, monitor, and evaluate implemented measures. This entails collecting age-disaggregated data on the state of youth involvement in the energy sector, seeking youth involvement in preparation of reports and publications, and developing and disseminating knowledge products that highlight youth leadership. And the last recommendation is to champion diversity, gender equality, women's empowerment, and inclusion. This entails conducting gender analysis and integrating gender dimensions in youth-related initiatives and programs, as well as ensuring the inclusive participation of underrepresented and less privileged youth. We invite all of the Commission members to give due consideration to these recommendations alongside the recommendations developed by the Commission. The list of recommendations is available on the High Level Dialogue website, and all stakeholders are invited to join as signatories. So please free to use that avenue to express support. Now, having completed the work of the Commission, we are looking forward to COP26. As the youth, we'll be in Glasgow and watching closely what decisions are going to be made there, because the commitments and agreements made today will impact our lives for years and decades to come. We hope that members of the Commission will live up to the level of ambitions declared throughout our proceedings and further exceed them. Time to act is running out. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Benjamin. And now we move to our final intervention of this session, and that is Commissioner Simpson. Commissioner, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Dan. Ladies and gentlemen, so thank you for
afterwards. It looks good.
Absolutely. Well, some excitement too. Thank you for the opportunity to add to the excellent interventions of previous speakers and bring the perspective of the European Union into this interesting discussion. And I would like to focus on a series of concrete initiatives by the EU to ensure the clean energy transition leaves no one behind and becomes an engine of growth, economic development, and job creation. First, I would like to recall the work of the EU with regions and communities that are the most affected by the transition, those still dependent on fossil fuels extraction and use in energy or industry. Since 2017, the European Commission has worked hand in hand with coal, peat, and oil shale regions across the EU to help them define their challenges, a vision for a local, clean, and fair energy transition, and concrete solutions to implement it. With the new just transition mechanism that will mobilize up to 75 billion euros over the next decade, we will accelerate the transition and help coal, peat, and oil shale regions tackle its social and economic consequences. And this means training or retraining the workforce and creating good quality, well-paid local jobs in future-proof sectors like renewables or energy efficiency. Second, I would like to recall the importance of energy efficiency, which should be prioritized across all sectors. The cleanest energy is the one we do not need to produce. This is why the EU has always followed the energy efficiency first principle when designing our energy transition. Last month, we published dedicated guidelines and recommendations for applying this principle in different sectors. Buildings account for a large share of our energy-related emissions, around 40% in the EU. And this is why I insist on the importance of massively investing in home renovations. The EU has launched a renovation wave to double the annual renovation rate in the Europe and renovate at least 35 million buildings across Europe by 2030. This would create thousands of new jobs in the construction sector by 2030, not to mention the positive impact on the environment, notably air quality and the improvement of health and living and working conditions. The renovation wave is designed to pay special attention to vulnerable consumers and those living in energy poverty. Investing in an energy efficient home alleviates energy poverty, as these vulnerable consumers usually live in less energy efficient homes and spend on average more on energy bills. We estimate that 31 million Europeans live in energy poverty today, and this is not acceptable. The renovation wave will help to remove the root causes of energy poverty, but it's a complex, often very localized issue. This is why this year the European Commission also launched a new energy poverty advisory hub that will become the center of expertise on this challenge in Europe. And I would also like to mention a new initiative, the Social Climate Fund proposed by the European Commission over the summer as part of our legislative package aimed to implement the Green Deal. The Social Climate Fund is expected to generate up to 72 billion euros from future revenues of carbon pricing on home heating and road transport. And this will be used to support those most exposed to an increase in energy and fuel costs, vulnerable households and micro enterprises. This new fund would come just in time to take over from the EU recovery program, which will start phasing out by 2025. So far, we estimate that around 60 billion of EU recovery funds are dedicated to energy efficiency and building renovation. To conclude, a just transition is a precondition for a successful clean energy transition. The transition will fail if it results in job losses, sluggish growth, and energy poverty. The shift to climate neutrality will require action by all of our citizens, and for them to be engaged, they need to see the benefits of the transition. These are lower bills, new jobs, and better life. And I hope the ideas and experience of the European Union can be a useful contribution to our joint reflection on the matter. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you so much, Commissioner, and that concludes that session. And now we move to our final session of this meeting, where we will talk about people as active participants in the transition. And I give the floor back to you, Brian.
Thank you very much, Minister Jorgensen, and thank you again to all of the speakers in that session for their very interesting and valuable interventions. Our final session, as the Minister said, is entitled People as Active Participants, where the Commission has made some key recommendations. And I remind everyone joining us that these recommendations in full detail, plus all the case studies highlighted by the Commission members as good practice in these areas, are all available on the IEA website now live today. The three recommendations being made are, first of all, to use insights from behavioral science to design effective behavior change policies for clean energy. Secondly, involve the public through participation and communication. And thirdly, enhance impact through international collaboration and exchange of best practice, very much along the lines of our discussion today. So with that, back to you, Minister.
Yes, thank you. And the first to take the floor in this final session is Cardinal Turkson. We are very pleased to have the Vatican represented on the Commission, and Cardinal, the floor is yours.
Okay. So thank you, Honourable Commissioner, and Your Excellencies, all of you, my dear friends and all participants in this I greet all of you very warmly from the dicastery of the Vatican of the Holy See, and I find it very providential that the concluding statement of the last speaker from the European Union, and eloquently introduces this section, because she had concluded saying that the just transition term would work when it calls on everybody to action. And that's just briefly what I would like to share with you. As a church organization, we recognize that one of the crucial ways of promoting and helping with this is to motivate, to persuade and inspire people to change. And therefore, we've designed a project that is meant to get everybody on board, especially in the civil society group and private investor group. So we've developed a small action here for the Vatican called the Laudato Si platform. And with this platform, we've identified 7 crucial components of our civil society group who can engage in action. And we've described 7 goals for action, and we've described ourselves, or we've given ourselves a period of 7 years to act by way of provoking a change. So 7 is the key number for us, 7 years by 7 actors in society to work on 7 goals. And so we begin by encouraging families to consider themselves as actors by way of promoting just transition. So family members can play a role. And to give an example, for example, several of you may know that in Poland, the people celebrate their birthdays by planting a tree. So if in the celebration of birthdays, people will plant a tree, just imagine how many trees will get planted in a year. That's the stuff of the family. So a family-based system can initiate a lot of projects. A second component of civil society that can also do something are our churches, our mosques, our synagogues, and our places of worship. So we are also inviting them, parishes, dioceses, mosques, synagogues, and all places of worship can also get involved. If they would all put solar panels on their roof of all churches, roof of all mosques, roof of all synagogues, that will go a long way also to contribute to this. Then we also encourage educational institutions, universities, colleges, polytechnics, schools, also to come on board with this, to embrace this project. Here in Rome, in the Vatican, several of the universities of the Holy See have embraced this project, and have called themselves Laudato Si universities, embracing the challenge to transform and to effect concrete energy transition schemes on their campuses. Then we also have hospitals and clinics and healthcare centers, all of them also being invited to also transition from on their energy dependency and energy sources. So again, from our point of view, if all the churches, if all the hospitals and clinics and dispensaries run by the Catholic Church would embrace this and all put their roofs on the solar or whatever, that would also be a big move. Then we also encourage the economic sector people, business people, businessmen, industries and all, to also come on board and embrace this system. And so are we also encouraging organizations, civil society organization groups to also come on board. And finally, we're encouraging religious orders, the Franciscans, the Jesuits, the Dominicans, all of these different groups to also come on board. And so we have these 7 groups. And for these 7 groups, we've identified also 7 goals for them each year to try to respond to. So for example, we invite them to respond to an attempt to respond to the cry of the earth, the need for response to the ecological stress that human development of the earth haphazardly has led to. Then the second time, they will try to respond to the cry of the poor, the suffering humanity affected negatively by the climate change and the global systems that we have. Then we talk about the need to develop ecological economics. It's not simply economics, for profit and gain, but ecological economics that is sensitive to ecological impact that they produce. Then we invite people also to adopt ecological lifestyles which are conducive to sustainable, ecological practices. And then finally, we ask people to also think about ecological spirituality, a way of life that is in consonance with our desire to see a change and to improve or to transition in our dependence on energy, dependence on water, our use of water, our use of energy. That requires a change from the heart. As we all go to Glasgow, there will be a lot of speeches made, but we would wish that all the speeches made will be inspired by deep concern, deep passion and compassion from the heart, to feel with creation and be compassionate with creation about the need to effect a change. And for all of this to happen, we also put an emphasis on ecological education. We need to educate people about ecological sensitivities, and they need to recognize that they're all ecological citizens and they make an impact on everything that happens. Their life depends on creation, and creation supports their life, and it's good that they care for all of these participants. And for all of this, we say we can try 7 years implementing all of this. At the end of every year, we try to identify which university has been the best, energy transitioner, which business has been the best in energy transition, which church or mosque or synagogue has been, so to motivate everybody to get to action. So this is our way of trying to encourage everybody to come on board with this call to energy transition, leaving nobody out. So briefly, this is the effort of the Vatican to make this initiative trickle down to every member of our society and citizen. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Cardinal. And now we go to our second participant from the SDG 7 Youth Constituency. So again, it gives me extra pleasure. We have a fantastic panel of speakers today, but I think we all agree that the young speakers are the most important ones. So thank you so much for being here with us. I give the floor to Shagosi Ude. The floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you, Minister, and good evening, Excellencies. Good evening from Geneva. And just following my colleague, Ben, I'm happy to speak on behalf of global youths of the SDG 7 Youth Constituency of the Major Group for Children and Youth. Indeed, no energy transition will be achieved without the people being at the center as active producers, customers, owners, and generally as participants. Young people are crucial in driving people-centered energy transition, more so in ensuring that no one is left behind. It is extremely important that young people are part of decision-making at the highest level of the energy space. For many years, young people working in this sector lacked a space of engagement in the various intergovernmental processes on energy. However, with many years of work and engagement with stakeholder countries, especially between 2018 and 2020, the SDG 7 Youth Constituency was established to bridge this gap. Since then, it has grown to over 1,000 people in membership, spread across all the UN regions with great membership, made tremendous achievement in galvanizing youth actions and mobilizing young people behind specific advocacies while striving to support youth-led initiatives, not least with the Youth Sustainable Energy Hub, the first global repository of sustainable energy businesses, initiatives, and enterprises led by young people. Just to highlight two of the over 100 projects documented on this hub. First is the Liter of Light Bangladesh, is a research-based social enterprise providing free of cost, eco-friendly lighting solutions to poor communities such as coastal areas, hill-tract areas, islands, slums, and refugee camps in Bangladesh. It develops and distributes easy-to-make lighting solutions out of locally available materials. Liter of Light runs livelihood projects helping poor communities to learn their technology and start their own micro-enterprise under Solarpreneur project. the Solarpreneur project made around 1,000 solar entrepreneurs, including the Rohingya refugees in Cox's Bazar. This group trained 100 plus voluntary organizations on light making so that they can serve in their own localities. They've also lit up around 30 localities so far, including slums, coastal areas, and Rohingya refugee camps. Another one is Energy Shift. It enables citizens to participate in energy transition by enabling them to invest and co-own a part of solar energy power plant, thus doing good for the environment and making money at the same time. They finished the business incubator and pre-accelerator program and received Solar Impulse Efficient Solution Level. They have set up a successful pilot project in the beginning of February that is providing clean energy for the solar installation company's office. But young people also face quite some challenges in a bid to become active participants in the advancement of energy transition, including bureaucratic barriers, including complex processes for registration of startups, accounting, obtaining licenses, and also race to bottom in terms of cost reduction of renewable energy installations, because since local startups and SMEs have little chance to compete with multinational corporations, investment spent on renewable energy projects is transferred abroad rather than reinvested in the local community through financing research, creating jobs, tax payment, etc. Also, more attention needs to be paid to even more people-facing aspects of energy transition. A lot of focus should be given to the transition of power supply, especially installation of solar PV plants on a utility and residential scale. With about 3 billion people lacking access to clean cooking and clean heating need to be at the center of energy transition, because pollution and cost of dirty fuels directly impact the health and safety of people, in particular children, women, and young people. It will require more financial commitment to provide the $41 billion annually needed to meet the clean cooking targets by 2030. Currently, only 1/3 of that was tracked in high-impact countries in Africa and Asia in 2018, according to SE for All. A public policy on clean energy is only equitable when all vulnerable groups in the country or communities are involved and benefiting from the solutions. While we are mobilizing the youth to take action, we urge member states and other stakeholders to raise their ambition and ensure a rapid, inclusive, and just transition to sustainable energy system. We call on you to increase participation of young people in the energy space nationally through permanent engagement mechanisms that allow them to interface with the relevant government ministries in all aspects of energy policy design and implementation. To support training of clean energy sector workforce and establish channels for civic participation in decision-making also at the regional level. In addition to being active participants, we vow to hold to account both your pledges and actions. We must remember that until we include people in every step of the way as drivers of energy transition, we will be jumping the gun in the bid to achieve energy transition. I thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you so much for that. And then for our last intervention of this session, it is from Belgium, Minister van der Straten. Tine, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Dan, and an honor to be the last speaker today of this ambitious program, but also from the work we did together in this commission. I wanted to share with you what I did 2 weeks ago. And what I did was I visited the hackathon of TSO ELIA. So ELIA is our Belgian transmission grid operator, and they organize different hackathons to tackle a number of challenges for the energy transition, including, for example, new market design. And they do so with the aim of increasing participation from students and young innovators. And so last week, they did their first hackathon, and they had 105 student programmers, universities, startups, and organizations participating in the hackathon, and they were divided in 14 teams. Each of these teams, they choose one challenge. And the challenges were: help consumers to choose the right service providers, improve the Solar to You app, predict how much energy consumers will need, ensure that smart homes become a reality, and facilitate smart communities. These 14 teams were given 3 days to work on their chosen challenge. and they received support from internal and external data and energy experts throughout the event. And they then presented their ideas to the 7-member jury, which selected the winning team and the teams for 2nd and 3rd place. And so I went there to give them a bit of support, and there was also a very special reason close to my heart why I went there. One of the teams that participated in the hackathon was Molengeek, and Molengeek is an NGO here in my home country, in my city, Brussels, and it's these are youngsters that are data professionals. They are coding. There are sometimes even school dropouts. They live in Molenbeek, just behind my corner here at home. And what we did and what I saw there was a group of young people together with an energy professional, and they didn't know each other before. Elia didn't know that Molengeek existed, and Molengeek didn't know that Elia existed. And they didn't win, but Elia gave them a very specific and special feedback so that they could win next time. And the result was also that 2 or 3 out of the group of 10 that they were now interested to apply with Elia. And this is it's a very specific example, but that's how we in Belgium sometimes try to bring different worlds together and to engage people, and in this case youngsters, into the challenge of the energy transition. All these young people, they went home and they talked about what they did. They talked about a battery, about an electric car. They talked at home about a solar panel, and most importantly, they talked about what their role could be in the energy transition. And so the energy transition became something real to them. And that's what we as policymakers should be aware of, that we all the time we like to talk about technology, but we should conquer hearts and minds of people. And that's also showing in practice what the energy transition can mean for you, and also what role citizens can play in the energy transition. And so it doesn't have to be very complex. In this case, it was just putting people together, be prepared to listen to each other, and to make the transition work. And so I'm very happy that now my Brussels youngsters, that was not for them energy is not their daily challenge, but that they will now be a part of the energy transition. And I think the most important thing what we did in our Global Commission was share these examples and learn from each other, and that we have all different realities in all our different countries, but we have one common goal, and that is to fight climate change. And we can learn from each other, and we can help each other to go further together. And so maybe Dan, I know that your agenda is very full, but maybe, I don't know if you could take up the challenge to chair another commission like this one, because we have done a marvelous job up until COP26, but I don't think that our work is finished. And you can be angry with me that I put something in your agenda, but I really do think that we should continue on what we started. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tina, first of all, for giving us this very concrete example. I mean, that is the basis of everything we've done here in this commission, to not only talk in narratives and not only give the overall picture. That is the easy task. The difficult task is to discuss this on a very concrete level, and then from the concrete level move into more abstract recommendations that can be utilized everywhere. So thank you so much for that. Where we will go from here, we'll see, but thank you so much. Now, this actually then concludes our sessions, but our program is not done here yet today. First of all, I'd like to give the floor to the Vice Chair of the Commission, Minister Gladimar, to give her concluding remarks. The floor is yours, colleague.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Ministre Dan Jorgensen.
Thank you very much, Minister Dan Jorgensen, for organizing this event. Ministers, Executive Director of the IEA, Dr. Birol, ladies and gentlemen, participants. As I open my concluding remarks, I would like to express my delight that this third session of the Global Commission has been held as we lead up to COP26, which will bring us all together, I hope, next week in Glasgow. This commission brings us together and has done since March 21 in the common aim of bringing human beings to the very center of our policies for the energy transition around the world. And I think that we have succeeded in this mission. This commission is a broader space for the exchange of experience between countries. Our countries have very different development profiles, have very different socioeconomic priorities, but we're all facing a common threat, and that is climate change. And we need to address it together in a coordinated manner, equitably, fairly, inclusively. These criteria must be followed both at a micro level among populations and at a macro level at the level of the states themselves, the countries. And I think that this is the key perspective to adopt to ensure the success of implementation of the recommendations that emerge from our work. On a micro level, it is essential that the states remain very vigilant to ensure that public initiatives and private initiatives taken in the context of energy transitions to clean energy do not call into question the socioeconomic acquis of our workers, our populations, our local companies, but rather strengthen them. These key criteria for assessment must be followed if we are to encourage policies and projects that take into account these needs. Economic profitability and carbon intensity cannot be the only conditions for financing public and private companies. Our value chains and the direct and indirect impact on the environment of these projects must also be taken into account. In Senegal, under the impulse of His Excellency President Macky Sall, we have adopted this approach by placing the focus on socioeconomic priorities in our country, among other things, the young people and employment, education. Today, young people under the age of 30 represent 77% of our population. We're also focusing on improving conditions or living conditions for women and girls, particularly in rural areas. We have a number of initiatives that we've already developed to focus on these areas. Our national biogas program, our agreement signed with the National Agency for Energy Economy, AEME, and the Federation of Bakers of Senegal, or even the agreement between the Ministry of Energy and the national education system. These policies and these national projects will need to be constantly monitored and followed up by organizations like the IEA and specialized regional bodies to ensure that we foster cooperation among countries working in supervised working frameworks and working to the same criteria. Ladies and gentlemen, the greatest challenges ahead of us are at the macro level. Coordination, justice, equity, inclusion are all things that we need to focus on constantly. We need to maintain our exchanges, and we need to set up a worldwide body that is responsible for monitoring and making sure that these criteria are respected. The differences between our respective countries cannot allow us to adopt a simple and undifferentiated approach to the energy transition. Our development profiles are different, our socioeconomic priorities are also different, and we need to take that into account. To illustrate what I'm saying, an undifferentiated funding of gas and oil projects would lead to an immediate disruption of world markets, economic destabilization of many countries, both producers and consumers of these products, and a lack of taking into account of socioeconomic difficulties. And so we need to be precise. Our African countries who have these resources and who depend on them also need to work on funding the energy transition in a way that takes into account these differences. We need flexible measures that will enable us to secure energy supply and ensure a transition, not just acting on the basis of promises, but concrete actions. The various bodies, including the IEA, need to broaden their governance and be more representative of the world in general. The IEA could be reformed to have this broader representation and to continue along the lines of the open door that Dr. Birol has been applying for years, setting out clear prerogatives. This seems to us essential to ensure that the energy transition is the kind of transition that we're all hoping for, and that it is in line with what we'll be pursuing at COP26, first of all, and beyond. I will encourage everybody to continue this thinking in 2020 and to continue to implement these measures to ensure an equitable, fair transition for all. I'll conclude by warmly congratulating all of the ministers and all of the people who are members of this commission for the remarkable work that we've been carrying out over these long months. Thank you to your technical teams. I thank all of you for your attention, and I am very pleased in advance of the possibility of formulating our common recommendations at COP26 in Glasgow. Thank you very much. All right, thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Minister, and thank you also for taking on the position as Vice Chair of the Commission. Now, before I give my my concluding remarks, I'll give the floor back to Brian.
Thank you, Minister Jorgensen, and also Madame la Ministre, je voudrais aussi vous remercier chaleureusement et sincèrement.
Thank you very much, Madam Minister. I warmly thank you for your intervention.
Really excellent leadership in the Commission on behalf of Dr. Birol, myself, and all of the colleagues here at the IEA. This Commission came together exactly 9 months ago to the day, in fact, and so we have worked you all very hard. We're very grateful for the 30 members who have worked with us, and of course all of their teams that brought together what I must say is a really excellent piece of work. And I can say this because it is the work of the Commission rather than us, that I really think we've achieved our goals to translate what can sometimes sound like abstract or easy to say principles about putting people first in transitions, but really actually making it actionable and practicable through the recommendations and through the vast set of case studies and examples that all of the commissioners identified as their key examples that others can learn from. And so we're really delighted to have had this engagement from all of you. And also thank you for your warm words about the work of the IEA and the work of the Commission. I just share with you very briefly, if I can, just a quick slide on some of the next steps in terms of rolling out the recommendations that we launched on behalf of the Commission today. First of all, of course, COP is a key moment. It's no coincidence that we're talking here just a few days before COP26, because the Commission members have always stressed that they want these recommendations to be influential, and not least in COP itself. So there will be a number of ministerial level events, including one hosted by Minister Jorgensen and also one hosted by Commissioner Simpson at the COP event next week and the week after. And these will be streamed online for those who wish to follow them. I'm also pleased to say we will be collaborating with the International Labour Organization on a joint Just Transition Forum in December, where we will be extending this conversation further. And of course, some of you may know that the IEA biennial ministerial meeting takes place early 2022, and I can assure you that this will be a significant theme among the leadership of that ministerial. And I'm very pleased to say that Minister Jorgensen is one of the vice chairs of that ministerial, and I know that he's going to lead some interesting discussions on this theme as well as wider themes at the ministerial. And all this is to say that, as Dr. Birol said at the start of this meeting, the IEA is absolutely committed to continuing to work with all of you, and indeed all wider stakeholders, on this very important topic in our work with governments throughout the world, helping them understand the urgent and strong actions that need to be taken to get us on the path towards net zero and to deliver the commitments governments have made. We see people-centered issues, just transition, inclusiveness as key issues, both because they are a core part of the value set of clean energy transitions, but also because these transitions will not succeed without putting people first and without enacting the kinds of principles and learnings that we shared here today. So I want to thank everybody once again, really very deeply on behalf of myself, Dr. Barala, and all the team, and particularly to you, Minister Jorgensen, for your great leadership. We couldn't have done it without you. You led us through this process extremely skillfully and intellectually with your leadership. And I want to thank you very much indeed, and handing back to you to close.
Well, thank you so much. Normally, it's only my mother that speaks so nicely about me, so I'll take that in. Thank you so much. In all honesty, I can definitely also reiterate just how big and hard work the IEA has done, especially you, of course, Brian and Fatih, but your whole team, and also, of course, thanks to my own team here in Copenhagen. And thanks to all of the participants for having joined this commission. We were very thrilled at the beginning that we managed to gather so many people. I was a little bit nervous that as the work progressed, that maybe we would lose some. Sometimes that happens in these processes, but it hasn't. Actually, the contrary has happened. We've seen even more engagement. So thank you so much for that. Thank you for those of you who's also met with me bilaterally. And thank you for always taking the time to participate in these sessions. Now, we have created a new language of what people-centered energy transition actually means. People sometimes ask what people-centered or just transition is. It's a fair question. And now we can tell them that it's about ensuring the benefits and costs of the transformation of our energy systems are distributed fairly, and that it protects the most vulnerable in society, leaving no one behind. It's also about skills, decent jobs, and worker protection, social and economic development, equality, social inclusion, and fairness. And it is about engaging people as active participants. As I reflect on today's dialogue, I am confident that we've achieved the aim that we set out to do. And with the recommendations now being published, we are well positioned to continue the important work. This is only the beginning. In less than 1 week, many of us will meet in COP26 in Glasgow to find and agree on solutions together to combat the climate crisis. COP26 will also be an opportunity to put the Commission's recommendations into action, put them into work. I know that the IEA is organizing several events, as Brian just showed us on the slides, and that is extremely positive. I'll definitely participate myself in the ones I can. And as Brian said, Denmark will host one of these events at the Danish Pavilion in the second week on the 9th of November. Looking beyond COP26, there are other opportunities to ensure the work of the Commission moves forward. The Clean Energy Ministerial Empowering People initiative is but one example of an initiative that could leverage the work of this Commission. I'm also keen to see the work already clearly embedded into the IEA's mandate for the clean energy transition going forward beyond the IEA Ministerial in February 2022. There are surely many other examples, and I hope that you will continue the work of the Commission going forward. We need to make sure that we are keeping the agenda high in people's attention. Thank you all for your participation. It's been a pleasure to chair the Commission. I look forward to our continued collaboration, moving this important agenda forward. Thank you all.